Warren Shaw. We about to get into some game face some things.
So you saying that to say what?
I'm saying it's only because you're hearing it.
No, you saying something. If you saying it, I'm hearing it because you saying it. What are you saying? Let it be said.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Time for us to speak on it. So much has been happening in the course of this NBA offseason. And we've talked about this in our previous shows, Shaw. We talked about how the NBA has really been at the forefront of social media, news content, conversation because of the names that have been thrown around, the moves that have been made. And it's interesting because now we blink our eyes, Shaw, and we're already like, what, less than a month away, about a month away or so, in a couple of weeks before we start talking about NBA preseason. And then right after that, we start talking about NBA tip-off season. And we really have not even focused our attention on some people that are floating out there, right? That have not been talked about through the course of this NBA offseason, that have had at least some type of running storyline in the year in the past season. So it's just really interesting what's been going on so far in the offseason.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with you. And I think topic of conversation now that we'll obviously discuss is leading into some guys who, for whatever reason, haven't been signed yet. Money is a little bit dry now, so it's going to be a little bit harder for them to find a home per se and find a reputable contract that they might have been looking for. But these are guys who should, at least in theory, still be able to help some of these teams out there. So I think that's the focus of our conversation today, man. It should be a good one.
Yeah, definitely. I like to call this home or homeless, right? So, now listen, sometimes we don't talk about we sometimes associate the misfortunate because of what they don't have. And in this case, as we talk about the NBA, what some of these players might not have is a home for them to play for, a team to play for. So that's our way of us doing this. We call it home or homeless. Shaw, let's go ahead and get it right.
I love it. Let's get it popping. So, first guy that I like to discuss, and what kind of even sparked this conversation a little bit for me was looking at the Boston Celtics roster, and they need a big, right? There's a couple of names out there.
Oh yeah, that one thing that we thought that they needed last year when they couldn't get past the Cleveland Cavaliers.
Yeah, so they moved Ziziku, obviously an unproven big in a deal, to the Cleveland Cavaliers in that mega trade for Kyrie Irving, and now they're left with what's out there. So it's kind of a weird name to start off things with, but let's go ahead and begin it. Lavoy Allen, I think, is a guy who traditionally, even in the case of Boston, has been a thorn on their side as kind of the pick and pop big, somebody that we're even familiar with even on our show. Do you think Lavoy Allen finds a home in the NBA this year?
Lavoy Allen finds a home, but I think it's at the midnight hour. I mean, right now he's on the outskirts because, and I partly blame for what hasn't really transpired for him with the Indiana Pacers. I think to me, that's what kind of stands out, because if you can't find yourself playing with quality minutes, given what's happened with the Indiana Pacers through the course of the last couple of years, I find it hard pressed that you're not going to find a team that won't be able to utilize what Lavoy Allen brings to the table. It's just that it's not going to be it's just going to be someone that's like, he gets picked up, but he gets picked up with a team that's just trying to fill roster spots than necessarily having to bring a skill set that's lacking for a team that needs to make that next big step.
Yeah, I can see that. But like as I alluded to, I think he's a guy in his minutes, he's a decent rebounder. Again, nice pick and pop big. So I think he does find a home, but I think you're right. Very much, minimum deal. Hey, training camp invite, if I works his way and gets on a roster, right? So I'm going to keep in the mode of the bigs here, kind of jump around a little bit here too. What do you think about Domantas Motiejunas? A guy who's been much maligned over his last couple seasons, injuries, and then his contract situation with the Rockets. Goes to New Orleans, doesn't really work out there. What do you think about Motiejunas? Is he going to be home or homeless?
I think Motiejunas might be homeless, man. Just simply because he's been down that road already once before, where he was dangling out in the midst by the Houston Rockets, and then suddenly he found himself, supposed to be playing for the Brooklyn Nets, and then he winds up again playing for the Houston Rockets, and then it's almost as if they kind of held him in limbo. I don't know if it's more so on the player and what he could actually do for teams and what he might feel his usefulness might be for an NBA basketball team. I think if the situation ain't right, he might wind up just being homeless on his own, just going to another place to play basketball rather than dealing with the politics of what's been happening to him over the last couple of years in the NBA.
Yeah, I can't really remember who his agent is. I want to say it's B.J. Armstrong. Forgive me if I'm wrong on that. I just didn't look that up right now. But yeah, Martinez might be one of those guys who goes to Europe, and maybe comes back towards the end of the season, after he's kind of got his legs back and prove that he can still play basketball. Keeping in the mode of the bigs here, somebody who just got recently over the weekend was waived by the Milwaukee Bucks. Stretch provision by the Milwaukee Bucks. They say goodbye to Spencer Hawes. So does Spencer Hawes find a home before the NBA season starts?
His Fu Manchu look might find a home on social media. I don't know if he's going to find himself a home to play for in the NBA unless it's really based off of a severe, significant injury. You can't teach height. Spencer Hawes has found himself playing with a multitude of NBA teams simply because of height. But I don't know if whether or not his skill set is going to allow him where in this day and age of flexibility at the front court level, the front court position, where his liabilities might actually wind up holding him back more so. So I think the Fu Manchu has a home, but the player itself, Spencer Hawes, might be homeless.
I'm going to disagree slightly. I think only because of his ability to shoot and space the floor a little bit.
Sean, I'm just letting you know right now, we need to be careful about how many names we keep throwing out here because I might be increasing the homeless population in the greater New York area.
Well, I think they'll be all right. These are guys, they'll be homeless in the NBA. They might find a home overseas or maybe even the G League to kind of prove themselves. But I think in the case of Hawes, being a guy who's only 29 years old and entering whatever, I guess the second prime of his career, if you will, 10 years in the league already, he has the ability to maybe catch on to it with the team just because he is a big, decent shot blocker at times, still slow-footed, but like I said, can space the floor a little bit with his shooting. Another guy I want to jump into is the old veteran, a guy who broke down after what it seemed like 30 seconds in the Cavaliers uniform, but Andrew Bogut. I think he makes his return and finds a home in the NBA.
If he stays healthy, yes. Because Andrew Bogut has a lot of stock in the fact that he is an NBA champion, in the sense that he is somebody that defends really well at his position. And look, if the Cleveland Cavaliers were pushing to get him on their roster, and when Andrew Bogut got on their roster, all but for the 30 seconds that he was able to significantly build up the hype about the Cleveland Cavaliers being the team then that should have the advantage over the Golden State Warriors, I think that still means something. The problem is that because he cannot stay healthy, there's really no reliance that whenever you do put him on the roster, that he's going to be able to sustain giving you what he's capable of giving you for whatever that team needs. So if you are whichever NBA team, whether you're a playoff contending team or a team that's just looking to put a big in the middle, it's great that you have the name Andrew Bogut on there. I just don't know if you're going to have Andrew Bogut, the block shot, the block shot specialist, defensive, the rugby like NBA center that a lot of other teams would have been clamoring for, just recognizing the fact that he just can't stay healthy, for more than 30 seconds.
And I think the lore of his name, if you will allow him to kind of stick around again this year.
The guy will always have a home in the NBA, even though his body might be sheltered.
Oh, that's low. All right,
that's not low, man. It's the truth, though, man.
Tough. So, all right, we're going to wrap up the big segment here a little bit here. I'm going to give you 3 names. I'm going to throw them at you, and just you tell me which one you think is most likely to find a home, all right? We got Roy Hibbert, Jordan Hill, and Thomas Robinson. Which one of those 3 is most likely to find a home in the NBA?
Roy Hibbert,
Jordan Hill,
Thomas Robinson. I think Thomas Robinson finds a home before Jordan Hill and Roy Hibbert. Look, Jordan Hill, he's a solid player. I think too many times, though, they put him in positions that take away from what he's capable of giving you. But Roy Hibbert, I think, we're past the rude boy Roy phase. He's not amassed everything that he's supposed to amass as far as a big goes. I think the most versatility that you get is in Thomas Robinson. He's proven that when on a team, he'll get physical. He's dedicated to play more defense than he is more so his offense. So to me, I think that's a good thing. I think any NBA team that's looking to get a rugged, rough and tumble guy that has more upside in youth, you get that with Thomas Robinson. Plus, he's one of the more physical of the 3 when you look at it. I think, and maybe more so that he's got more tats, I think, more than Jordan Hill. That might actually get him an inside straight to getting on a team. So I think Thomas Robinson finds a home.
Yeah, I think I'd agree with that. I think of the three, I'm pretty sure he's the youngest. He might be a little bit younger than Jordan Hill. I'm pretty sure of that. And then nothing else, I think he's a guy who's probably had the least amount of opportunity throughout his NBA career. So there still might be hope with, all right, in the right situation, given these X amount of minutes, maybe he could produce. And he's out there self-proclaiming that he could be a top 10 rebounder if he was given, 25, 30 minutes a night. So, again, I don't know if that's going to be, his future anytime soon, but nevertheless, I think he probably has the biggest upside of all those three guys. So now let's go into a couple guys that I'm stunned to some degree are homeless currently as we record this show. But first guy I want to mention in that is Monta Ellis. The Pacers decided they're going in a new direction. Once he was let go, I thought he'd be somebody, not that he'd get snatched up off waivers, but somebody who people would go clamor to, if you will, to some degree, especially putting him in the right role. Not somewhere who's going to have to be a feature guy coming up the bench as a sixth man. What about Monta Ellis? Do you think he finds a home? And if so, do you have any ideas where that might be?
Monta Ellis is an intriguing player because, we talk about the dynamic and the landscape of NBA players and I guess the way that the systems are set up for how some of these players can succeed. And I find it interesting. Monta Ellis is one of those guys that's been trapped in that vortex where it looked like he was ahead of our time playing at the shooting guard position because of the way that he was so dynamic. And then now all of a sudden he's considered archaic because of the way that he plays his game now just doesn't seem to be well suited for what a lot of other teams are doing. And look, Monta Ellis is not like 40 years old or anything, but the age factor might play into he's going to be who he is. And it's hard to get a guy to change his ways to adapt when the system and the way that, the game is being played tends to change. And I think that might be to the hindrance of Monta Ellis. Now, it doesn't mean that Monta Ellis won't find a home. Monta Ellis, I think, will find a home. He's always been a dynamic scorer. What I do think is interesting is whether or not Monta Ellis can embrace playing the six-man role, because it always seems like Monta Ellis has to be a player who you put in a starting position, whether it be that by the contract that he's given or just by the pure name that's been floating around. I think if Monta Ellis embraces that he can be an impact player coming off the bench, like a Jamal Crawford, kind of like what Jaylen Brown started to do and then re-implement, and now he's implemented himself where he's actually going to be a starter for like the Boston Celtics. But somewhere in that realm, in between that, Monta Ellis might still find a home. If not, he may virtually be homeless because nobody wants to pay the money that he may command for what it is that he doesn't bring any longer to the table.
Yeah, I think it's going to be an interesting proposition for Monta. I think he's somebody, obviously, who still has a lot of NBA legs with him and can contribute exactly, as you said, though, in the right role. There's a couple teams out there that I know can definitely use some firepower and something that he can bring. You look at a team like the Orlando Magic, maybe the Charlotte Hornets, the Sacramento Kings perhaps coming in at that situation. Could he go to the Clippers and be a bench guy there? Denver might need some bench help too, but they have a lot of young guys, so maybe that's not a perfect situation. For me, Memphis has always seen that struggles offensively. Dallas, I think, is another situation that might be amenable to him. So there are teams out there that could definitely use Ellis' services, but again, it is going to be about the right coaching fit and the right fit for him in terms of his personality and mentality. At this stage of his career, he's got to be thinking about trying to help a team and helping develop some of the younger players out there. I think an X Factor team that might be out there, really that I'm almost hesitant to say because people are going to think I'm crazy, but listen, if the San Antonio Spurs took a chance on a guy like Rudy Gay, who just doesn't really seem to fit their mold and model, maybe they would take a chance on a guy like Ellis as well too, bring him in there and just kind of trying to mold him and fit him into that culture to give them some more firepower off their bench as well too. So not saying that that's out there, that's even remotely possible of happening, but it's just something that I would take a look at, if I was San Antonio Spurs as well too. So moving on though, let's go keep in the Ellis mode, if you will. He had a teammate in Indiana who's also looking for a new home now, and that's Rodney Stuckey. Will Rodney Stuckey find a home before the NBA season starts?
I feel like we're displacing the whole Indiana Pacers roster amongst everyone else. Like, they can't find a home in Indiana anymore, so we got to find them a home somewhere else.
Kind of crazy, right? This is a little awkward.
So are we saying, who are we saying now, home or homeless?
Rodney Stuckey.
Rodney Stuckey. Rodney Stuckey, I believe is going to be homeless. I hate saying this because I really feel like Rodney Stuckey is he's one of those guys like you think about with Rudy. Most of his NBA life has been predicated on he's too small to do the things that you would have asked him to do, and yet he found a way to do it. I think that we've gotten past that. If a guy like Isaiah Thomas, who is virtually an MVP candidate now and is basically being traded up for Kyrie Irving, and the Cavaliers are willing to risk their NBA season practically at the idea of getting an Isaiah Thomas, which at the very end may still wind up being a benefit to them given the haul that they got in off of the Boston Celtics. It makes me wonder about where would a guy like Rodney Stuckey truly be now? Because this is Rodney Stuckey past his prime, not Rodney Stuckey, at the peak of his NBA capabilities. So I almost feel like Rodney Stuckey might wind up being a homeless NBA player simply because most of these rosters are being filled up and with players that are being moved around either with youth or youthfulness. And it's not usefulness that becomes the question because Rodney Stuckey has not done anything dynamic since his tenure playing with the Detroit Pistons. So I think he winds up being homeless.
Fair enough. And I read a report recently. I think Shams said that Stuckey's going to be hosting some workouts, in essence, to try to lure a job. So I think by virtue of that, he probably does latch on and finds a home somewhere, but in a very, very limited role. Especially until he can prove that he's healthy. Never really developed his 3-point shot, and was just never really been able to stay healthy and be a consistent player on any basketball team. So if he does that, I think in a limited role, maybe he catches on. But same thing kind of in the mode of Ellis. He just got to make sure that he goes there and understand what he's going to do on whatever team that he's next. Guy that I'm very surprised about, and I think he's a fan favorite from first team all defense, man. Tony Allen. What's up with this? And not him having a home yet. And does he find one before the NBA season?
I think Tony Allen finds a home. I think Tony Allen is one of those kind of guys that you have to put. He's basically the person that the Cleveland Cavaliers wish they had gotten when they signed Dante Jones. Okay. They wanted a guy to put in there to come and do something, play defense, come off the bench, spark something. Now, I'm not saying Tony Allen is not someone that is capable of maybe starting for an NBA team. I don't think the circumstances play that out because teams are trending at his position to go younger and are willing to coach guys up. It's just whether or not Tony Allen believes that he is willing to take a back seat to any development player that they're trying to add in there. But I think for the most part, unless it's a playoff-based team, which Tony Allen can still come in and contribute and significantly help, or it's a team that needs a veteran presence to go in there and coach up these younger guys to play the 2-3 position well, be able to defend multiple positions like Tony Allen used to do, he will find a home. I think where he becomes homeless is the idea that most of these roster spots have been filled and they don't see where he can come in for the money that they're going to pay him to do, where that's going to make any sense. But I think Tony Allen, though, is a better prospect for teams that need a solid veteran-laid player to come in and do the dirty work, whether it's off the bench or a starting position. He finds a home.
I agree. I don't see any way, shape, or form that Tony Allen's out of the league already this year. And I think it's just a matter of circumstances that it is with Memphis right now. Maybe he returns back there on some sort of different deal, but obviously he's a little bit older now. Still
find himself with the Celtics. Could revisit that. You never know.
Well, I think that would be a little bit difficult for Boston with their plethora of backcourt players already and the young guys that they need to develop. But you're right in terms of that they are missing some defense now, and maybe he is somebody who could come in there and really coach up some of those guys, the Jaylen Browns and your Tatum. But I think Allen, one way or another, is going to find a home before this NBA season starts. He's just too valuable on the defensive side of the basketball floor. All right, so we'll move things on a little bit quicker now. So we're going to go a little 2x2s here. We're going to put Ty Lawson against Brandon Jennings. Which one of those guys, or do you think both of those guys find a home before the NBA season?
I think Ty Lawson may find a home before Brandon Jennings. And I hate to say that because as far as I'm concerned, neither one of these guys really should find a home in the NBA. I'm not trying to sound, like, the Grinch or come off Trumpish in my mentality and stuff. But Brandon Jennings did himself no favors for what he wasn't capable of doing for the Washington Wizards when they brought him over. And Ty Lawson just seems to be obsolete. I don't know why. I feel like Ty Lawson still despite his off the court issues, when he's on the court and he's in the right situation, he really can be a contributory factor for teams in the right situation. But with Brandon Jennings, he always seems to be a loose cannon. It's an either or with him, even though the guy has a ton of upside and really could help teams. But I think that his issues are more on the court with coaches and dealing with him than it is off the court. So I don't know where you find both of them, but I believe that since both of these guys are head cases in their own right, I don't know if it's worth the issues that you're now seeing with the development of guys coming out of the G League, worth to throw that kind of money out just for saying that you're getting a Brandon Jennings or a Ty Lawson.
Yeah, I think that's a very interesting point that you make up there too. With Lawson, he did all right in Sacramento. Again, it wasn't anything to write home about, but they were relatively okay with his production. Brandon Jennings, I think, was a complete disappointment as somebody we pegged to potentially be a Sixth Man of the Year candidate in New York. Ends up getting traded to Washington. He didn't really do much for them off their bench. So I'm hesitant to say, but I think Lawson, even though being the shorter of the two guys, I think he might have a little bit more staying power. But I don't know if either one of them are really going to find the requisite home that they're looking for this NBA season, or especially at the beginning of the year. These are guys that might have to kind of wait until December or an injury takes place to somebody else, and then they get picked up that way. So I'm not confident in either one of their perspectives moving forward. All right. Now, before we get out of the guards here, the last two guys, and these are two guys who are pretty much already know the answer to, but I'm going to ask you anyway. Aaron Brooks and Trey Burke. Do these guys find an NBA home this NBA season?
Trey Burke is going to be homeless. Aaron Brooks, for whatever reason, because this guy seems to always I really feel like he's buried seeds in every single NBA team, because he always seems to find a team to play for in the NBA, even when we don't think he should be in the NBA, right? Like, seriously. The guy comes out of Oregon. Oregon has never been known for basketball. They've been known for neon green and, all sorts of things. Aaron Brooks has never been known to be a starter in the NBA. He starts in the NBA. Aaron Brooks, every time we say Aaron Brooks has never been for something, he's always been for something. So what more can I tell you? But I find myself more intrigued about Aaron Brooks finding placement in the NBA than I am about Trey Burke, and that's saying something.
I can agree with that, and I think Burke is somebody who probably just he's done. Never lived up to the hype that came in out of college on the mission. I don't think there's much of a chance. I also don't think there's going to be much of a market.
Which is inexplicable, but again,
I don't think there's going to be much for a market for Aaron Brooks. So, similar situation that we just talked about with Lawson and Jennings, where maybe if somebody goes down, Burke probably not. Burke's probably going overseas somewhere, and that's going to be the end of it. Brooks may just because he's been around.
But that might actually be a good thing for Trey Burke, though, Shaw.
I think so too.
I think he just needs to. He cannot be in this dynamic of being in the, because I don't think that his mind is completely focused at hand on the things that he's supposed to do well for himself and the things that he can improve on. He seems to always find himself battling between the two, and it just comes at the most inconvenient situation or inconvenient time, which happens to be on teams where he's supposed to help rebuild a franchise. He couldn't do that in Utah. And then ultimately he's supposed to be a base or a foundation to help out John Wall, which he was never able to do. So, what do you do at this particular point? You send him down back to the G League so you can think that he might become of something? I agree with you. I think that his best bet is to go overseas and remake his name about what kind of player he wants to be, whether it be professionally in the NBA or just in general.
Yeah, and I think it's a sad situation for Trey, who I like as a person, and thought I expected and hoped for big things for him coming out of Michigan and going into Utah. But I remember I guess it was his rookie year, then the second year they drafted Dante Exum. That had to show you all what Utah thought about him. What was going on going into that situation. So, and I remember Tony Jones, our friend there out there, saying that Exum was going to usurp him, if you will, in that starting lineup, and that happened. But then Exum got hurt, and George Hill came there, and now there's Ricky Rubio. Either way, Trey Burke is long gone from his time in Utah and might be long gone from the NBA this upcoming season. Last two guys, I'm going to put them against each other as well, too. I personally am going to go out here and say this already. I think both of these guys are going to find a home, but we'd love to see what you have to say about it. Shabazz Muhammad from the Minnesota Timberwolves, formerly Minnesota Timberwolves, and Mike Dunleavy, a veteran guy who, should still be able to provide some shooting from the outside. Do both of these guys find a home, or are they headed to a separate path?
My heart tells me that Shabazz Muhammad and Mike Dunleavy, I think Muhammad finds a home, Mike Dunleavy doesn't find a home. But my head tells me with the way that NBA teams are putting together their rosters, both of them will somehow find a home. You just really can't teach southpaw shooting, okay? I think sometimes it's a good thing when you got a lefty that's out there that can give you a little something. His height, his skill set, he's still young. He can still give you something as a Shabazz Muhammad. And I think the fact that he was a part of that youth movement might still lend him a little bit of currency to be somewhere in the NBA at some particular point. Mike Dunleavy, however, is a curious case because let's keep in mind, Shaw, he'd been traded in 2 times over last season, basically, and wind up playing for the Cleveland Cavaliers, which should be an NBA championship caliber team, which would not basically couldn't keep Dunleavy. So they went and they got Kyle Korver. And Kyle Korver has been marketably a better shooter than Mike Dunleavy has. So what does Mike Dunleavy have or can bring to the table at this particular juncture when it comes to any of these teams that we're talking about right now that we haven't already seen from him throughout the years? I don't think it's a question that he's not a solid player. It's just a question of being a solid player who stays healthy. And that, again, goes back to that point where if you're older and you're not healthy, you become part of that list of guys that's really, really questionable. And then you now say, well, is Dunleavy better than the Bogut's? Is Dunleavy better than the Allens of the world? You know what I'm saying? Even if the guy can or cannot shoot. And I just think that that's going to be to his detriment. I really think that while Mike Dunleavy can still give you something, the fact that he can't stay consistently healthy becomes a liability factor for a guy like him, because ultimately he's already been on display for other higher end teams, playoff teams, and wasn't able to stay on their rosters.
Yeah, Dunleavy is going to be like the James Jones of the NBA, I think. Just somebody who's going to continue to find a roster spot, like fill in, that 15th man.
He's like, I know that guy. I know LeBron. Yeah. LeBron may get Mike Dunleavy a job somewhere in the NBA, but not Mike Dunleavy Jr. himself will be able to do it.
Yeah, we're talking about guys, over a decade apart in terms of their age, Shabazz Muhammad and Dunleavy. So Muhammad, I'm a little stunned. He's probably of my guys, right up there with Ellis in terms of people I'm most surprised are jobless as we record. But Dunleavy at 36, I guess will be 37 at some point this year as well too. I think he's somebody who will find some end of the bench to stick on. And still be in the league, but Muhammad should definitely find a home sooner than Dunleavy does. So that kind of wraps up my list, for the homeless. Two other guys too, kind of honorary mentions, if you will. They're not homeless yet. And I don't think anything's going to happen there. But JaMychal Green and Alex Len, JaMychal Green of the Memphis Grizzlies and Alex Len of the Phoenix Suns, they have restricted offers out there, qualifying offers from their respective teams. Is there any chance, knowing that money's a little bit dry right now, is there any chance that those guys can go out there and find a bigger offer from out there in restricted free agency than they have from their current teams currently?
It's possible, but I think more so for JaMychal than I do think Alex Len. The problem that I have with Alex Len is Alex Len has been. He's a first-round draft pick. JaMychal Green clearly wasn't. The first-round draft pick, and the guy has not lived up to being the big that I think anybody or everybody thought that he was going to try to be, out of Maryland. So, again, I don't know what his expectations are moving forward. He's clearly not going to be put into a situation where they're clearly going to say, we want you to be the man. He's going to have to earn that aspect of it, and it may more so be him showing versatility playing at that position. We've seen flashes of him being a solid player, right? But we've also seen where he can't hold his own. I mean, to allow Tyson Chandler to be the starting center for quite a period of time, even while you were still supposed to be the big of the future for the Phoenix Suns, really says something at this particular juncture. So if you are Alex Len, I really think you have to go in eyes wide open. You're not going to get what you want, but if you get an opportunity to establish yourself as being a solidified center in the NBA, you need to jump on that wherever it allows you. JaMychal Green, I feel like, is a multi-talented tool player that he could find himself being somewhere where, given the minutes and the opportunity, he can do some things. He's not going to do anything outstanding or stupendous, but he can do some things, and that might bode well to him because, remember, he did play in Memphis, and ultimately, playing in Memphis, you seem to either resurrect your career or you could very easily bury your career. So for JaMychal Green, I just feel like in many ways he has the edge over Alex Len about who might find placement in the NBA, who might find a home earlier than later.
Yep, and I can't disagree with that at all. I think JaMychal Green definitely had some nice time in Memphis. Again, stretchy-ish big, if you will. Understood, he unsupplanted Zach Randolph in that starting lineup in Memphis for the last 2 seasons, roughly, or season and a half, really. And he played well. So I know things are a little bit tense right now for him in the Memphis Grizzlies. I think he finds a way back over there. Len, I'm not too sure about. I think, you know what, if he doesn't get an offer, he comes back and he'll try to prove it this year. And maybe next summer he gets a bigger deal. But I don't know that, there's a whole lot of interest out there. I think Phoenix did the right thing by just tendering him that qualifying offer, because I don't think he's going to get a bigger offer out there. JaMychal Green, there might be somebody out there who might scrape together some money to try to see if they can put him into their lineup. But I think, Len's going to do himself a great service if he's able to really play well in his role and whatever that is in Phoenix this year and try to make some money next summer. So that's all the list that I have here, my dude. Any final thoughts before we wrap things up?
No, there's just a ton of guys that are like obviously willing and able, and hopefully some of these guys can find themselves a place to to play for this upcoming NBA season. If not, I hear PC Richards and Son have a great sale for some 43, 63-inch televisions for them to sit back, relax, and watch the 2017-18 NBA season.
Man, we can always bring them on the show, man. They can be guests on our show and talk about their NBA experiences or maybe lack thereof, man. So I think that
might be good therapy. That might be good therapy for them. It could be. Listen, be sure to catch Callie Warren Shaw of the Baseline NBA podcast each and every single week. My man Shaw at Shaw Sports NBA, at GameFace Lee, the show's Twitter handle at NBA Baseline. Callie Warren Shaw of the Baseline NBA podcast. Be sure to check us out each and every single time you lock us in.